I've mentioned the monument of Victor Emmanuel, the Vittoriano, and I just wanted to say a couple more words about it because, and you'll see how it fits into the context here in a moment, because it's a 19th century building. And it's a building that was put up to honor the first king of the Kingdom of Italy. His name was Victor Emmanuel I, Victor Emmanuel I. It was put up in 1885, and you see it here, again, a major landmark in the city. This is a Google Earth image once again. But the reason I show it to you in this context today is that it is, in a sense, terraced on the slope of the Capitoline Hill. You see Michelangelo's oval piazza up there. It's terraced on the slope, a series of levels, staircases leading to terraces, leading to other terraces, leading to the top of the building, decorated with statuary. It's a real experience to climb up it. It's an amazing place to go. It has the tomb of the Italian unknown soldier here, and with guards and eternal flame and all of those things. And I must add, for any of you who have not been in Rome in the last year and who are hoping to go sometime soon or whenever in the future, they have just added on top of the Victor. It was always a great place to climb up and see great views of Rome, but they have just added an elevator, a modern elevator that they've created that you can now take up, taking you even higher than you were ever able to go before. The views of Rome from there are among the most spectacular that one can see in the city. So I happened, unfortunately, when I was there this past June, it was raining, and it doesn't rain in Rome that often at that time of year, but it was. So many of the pictures that I took are, you know, sort of this sort of gray background and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, some of the most spectacular views you see of the city. So don't miss out on that opportunity. But I show it to you in this context because of all of this terracing up a hill. The idea for this kind of thing goes way back to the 2nd century BC and comes from buildings like this one. This is, without any question, the masterpiece of Roman concrete architecture, concrete construction, sanctuary design in the 2nd and 1st centuries BC. We're not absolutely sure of its date. For a long time, this is, by the way, the sanctuary of Fortuna Primigenia at a town called Palestrina. The date is very controversial. There are many who long associated it with the Roman general Sulla and said that it dated to 80 BC. There are others who have contended that it's much earlier than that. It dates to the 2nd century BC. And if it dates to the 2nd century BC, it's even more amazing because that means it comes at the beginning rather than at the end of this 2nd and 1st century BC development. I tend now, I've gone back and forth. I taught it as a Sullan building for quite a while. Now I've been teaching it the last few years as a 2nd century building. It probably doesn't matter all that much. It dates to one or the other, and it's an example of what was going on at that particular time. But I'm giving you a date this year as 2nd century BC, which I think at this juncture is probably, my personal opinion is that's probably where it belongs. You're looking at it here. It is part of an incredible hill town, just like Cori. The city of Palestrina is a beautiful hill town. You can see it here with all the wonderful red roofs of the town that tie the design of the town together. The culminating monument of that town is still the sanctuary of Fortuna Primigenia. Once again, the Romans have found a spectacular locale for this sanctuary, cum theater, cum shopping mall, mecca for Romans of its day on this hillside. They have, once again, they have in fact taken over the entire hillside. They have terraced the hillside, as we can see, and they've essentially poured concrete on that hillside to create a system of ramps and stairways, and with a temple at the very apex. It is pretty well preserved today. You can see there's an awful lot of it still there. You can either, if you're coming by car, you can either park down here or up there, and you can make your way up the ramps, up the staircase to the various levels, and then up to the theatrical entranceway into the uppermost part. The temple of Fortuna herself, which was at the apex and was located probably in what may have been a kind of mountain alcove at that particular time, was transformed in the 17th century by the famous Barberini family famous Italian family, popes came from that family and so on, transformed into, they were very smart too, transformed into a nice little palace that they could go and stay in when they felt like it, a small palace, but one that takes the exact shape of that uppermost part of the sanctuary. I'll show that to you in a moment. Here's a view from Google Earth. You can see Google Earth doesn't always work. When you go out to some of the smaller places, it's hard to zero in on it well enough to get a decent focus. But you can see it actually here. You can go to Palestrina and see it on Google Earth. This is, these are the various tiers with the palace at the uppermost part. Here's a restored view. It's on your monument list that gives you a sense of what the building looked like in antiquity. You can see the entranceway was down here, a small arched entranceway, but you really needed to go up the ramps. You could go up on either side. So we see this composite, just like we saw at the tabularium, this combination of ramps and staircases to make your way up. Varied experiences, but at the same time a predetermined path. Because while you had some choice when you first arrived, you could go up the ramp on either left and right, and you can see it was a covered ramp in antiquity. But when you got here, you had one choice. You had to go up this stairway to this level, and then there were some shops here you could explore, but then if you wanted to go up to the next level, you had to go back to the central stairway, up to this level, back to the central stairway, and then to the stairway in the shape of a theater at the uppermost part. So again, experiences stressed, your experience of the building was stressed, but at the same time your path was determined by the Roman designer. This is another view of the same, where we can see the entranceway, the ramps, the staircase leading you from one to the other, the uppermost staircase. Here you can well see the theatrical, the way in which the theater, the semicircular theater, is used both as an attractive entrance stairway to the structure, but at the same time as a place where performances could actually take place. Then what's called a hemicycle. You see several hemicycles here, Hemicycle. These curved areas, the columns follow that curve. You see that hemicycle at the very top, and then at the ultimate, at the apex of the structure, the shrine of Fortuna herself, a small round shrine. In fact, it's almost an anticlimax to see how small the shrine at the uppermost part of the structure is. How did the Romans achieve this? They created, as you can see here, a series, or they converted the hillside into a series of man-made terraces. They've built those terraces up in some instances by barrel vaults. You can see the series of concrete barrel vaults here as they have built some elements up along the way. And the ultimate result was what you see here. The same sort of thing we saw before, the ramps, the staircase, the hemicycles with columns supporting a curved wall, a series of shops, the spectacular theater-like staircase, the curved hemicycle at the uppermost part, and then peaking up at the top, the temple of Fortuna herself. It's hard to conjure up in a classroom in New Haven the actual experience that one has when one goes to Palestrina and climbs through this structure, and is not as well preserved today as it once was, obviously, in antiquity. But in the few minutes that remain, I want to try to recapture or try to take you through that experience, where obviously, and to show you how arduous it actually was. It's a climb up there, and in fact, this is one of those examples, and there are many in Italy, that one likes to call stairmasters made by nature, essentially. I mean, places that you can go and you exert a lot of effort into making your way to the top of this sanctuary. The best natural stairmaster in Italy is, of course, any of you have been along the Amalfi Coast. You know, there's nowhere on the Amalfi Coast that you don't have to climb up and down with multiple times a day. And that's exactly what's happening here. And you can see how steep this path up the ramp was. And we're going up the ramp again. It was covered in antiquity. It's open to the sky today. As we go along the ramp, we see the remnants of some of the capitals. These are travertine capitals, as you can see here, fallen down. But if you look at some of these capitals in detail, you see something quite extraordinary, and that is the capital isn't straight. The uppermost part of the capital slopes. Now, why is that? The reason that is because if you're going to put columns along the inner wall of the ramp, which is what they did, the capitals, have to conform to the incline of the ramp, and so they have slanted those capitals. The whole idea, though, of changing, the Greeks would never do something like that. I mean, it would be sacrilege to change the shape of a capital. But this Roman architect has done that with abandon here. He needed to do it because he needed to fit it into the scheme, although he could have not had columns there, but he wanted to have columns there, so he slanted them. This sort of sacrilegious approach to traditional Roman to traditional Greek and Etruscan architecture, the willingness to change things, to experiment. I told you this was a change you believe in. The willingness to change these things, to experiment with them in ways that had never been done before, to go against the tenets of traditional ancient architecture, namely that of the Greeks and Etruscans, is something quintessentially Roman and something that we see happening here, and again heralds a very innovative future. Here we see again the ramp, we see the capitals, the slant of the capitals, and we see that the work here was concrete faced with opus and keratum, both for the walls and also for the ceilings. As one makes one's way up the ramps, we see these alcoves, all of this done, the various shops, the alcoves, all of it done with concrete faced with opus and keratum. We see the remains of the hemicycles. You can see the columns made of tufa with travertine capitals supporting this curved attic of the hemicycles. We see the vaulting with its concrete construction. This is an annular vault once again, where we can see the facing is in the coffers is opus and keratum work. Another view of that, both the wall and the annular vault decorated with opus and keratum work. A detail of that opus and keratum work to show you how very attractive it was. It's a pity that it was stuccoed over in ancient Roman times. A view that I took again just to give you a sense of how steep the climb is. You've made it up the ramp. Now you're at that central staircase. You're on your way up. It's very, very steep. The stairways are pretty narrow, are short, so that it's a very arduous trip up, as I said, and then you can get a sense of the fact that you would have seen the sanctuary of Fortuna at the top. Now you see the embracing arms of the Barberini Palace, but you can see those arms follow the exact shape of the original hemicycle that was once there. And you can also see the theater staircase, very well preserved, and I show you a detail of that theater staircase leading into the doorway into the museum today. And just in closing, a return to the restored view of the structure itself with the sanctuary of, with the temple or the shrine of Fortuna at the very apex, a shrine that unfortunately no longer survives. But I think as you look at this last view of this monument, you can see that what the architects have created through this terracing, through pouring concrete on this spectacular hillside, is a kind of a pyramid with the goddess at the apex, a pyramid that I would contend was more extraordinary through what the Romans did with concrete than what nature itself had provided in the form of this mountain. And it gives you an incredible sense of what the Romans were capable of doing in the 2nd and 1st centuries BC vis-a-vis concrete architecture, experiments that again are going to have a lasting impact on the architecture that we'll be studying in the course of this term. Thank you.